Essentially, give you guys a little bit of it's like I'm getting this.
That's how we do it. Schools are out.
Anybody like to sign up to speak?
Not yet. Not yet.
Been looking 5:59 for 5 minutes.
Good evening, and welcome to the Mayor and City Council study session for January the 2nd. Hope everybody had a good new year. We want to open our agenda tonight with public comments. Lisa, do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
No, sir, there's no one signed up.
All right, thank you. We'll move then to our staff reports. We'll ask the city manager, Scott Collins, if he would update us. Mr. Collins.
Mayor, I just have a couple of issues I just want to touch briefly on, and more information will be forthcoming. But did want to give the council a notification on next month's agenda. We may be bringing a proposal to make the cemetery a standalone city department. And also, we're getting some information on the TDEC restrictions on our burn pit. And we're working with Public Works and others, trying to determine how to continue the services that our public are accustomed to. Yet we've got challenges now. The TDEC says we can't burn any brush that has greenery on it, which 98% of it. So by February, we hope to have some working numbers and what that impact will be. And then the city council approved the TIF policy, the tax increment financing policy, last June. But our city recorder brought it to my attention, we technically need to do a resolution to
Adopt it.
to formally, well, it's already approved, but to adopt it, we need a resolution. So we would like to ask that that be added to tonight's agenda so we can have it on next week's business meeting agenda. Mayor, that's all I have at this time, so.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Lisa, do we need to make any changes to add that to our agenda tonight? Do we need to add it as?
No, sir, unless someone has a, opposition to it, since council's already approved it by a formal business motion, I'll just add a resolution that just adopts that policy. It'll just state that it adopts the policy as y'all had approved in June. And the policy will be attached to the resolution.
Mr. Mayor, can I get a very brief 2-3 liner as to what that is, that break in taxes, that type of thing, just to.
The policy, and I didn't bring, oh, thank you. This is what it was, the policies and procedures, and it's a lengthy document, and it just lays out, if someone comes to us wanting a TIF, which is, tax increment incentive financing, that's like where you, would give them a break on their property tax. My understanding is that under most circumstances, you are going to let them continue to pay property taxes on the unimproved value of the property for a certain amount of years. And then, at a point, they'll start paying on the improved value of the property where the building has been added and all that. And you're getting sales tax the whole time. So that kind of levels out the field. And there's a certain dollar amount that they have to reach for their investment in order to be eligible for the policy. They have to fill out an application for it, and I believe does it come back to the council to approve the TIF? I believe it does have to come back to the council of the IDB board one to approve the TIF once they do all the work with it.
There's a formal application process that they have to go through. that we'll discuss with this council. And then the IDB is the ultimate authority on it for Tennessee code annotated. But this just, again, it's already approved, but this puts it in resolution form and makes it clean.
The maximum percentage of a project cost and minimum project size that's listed in the policy says the amount of a tax increment incentive for a specific project shall not exceed 15% of the total projected project cost of any applicant. The applicant must also reasonably anticipate a total project cost of at least $3 million with respect to a proposed project in order to apply for this. So does that kind of answer your question?
It does.
And I will include a copy of the policy behind the resolution, so you'll be able to look it over.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions about that? All right, our discussion items tonight, number one is the North Britain Drainage Project update, and we'll ask our city engineer, Will Owen, to come and bring us up to date on that. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, Happy New Year, and thank you for having me tonight. I think Mr. Valad gave you guys an update, I believe at your October-November work session, I believe, after we'd had some time of exploration through excavation on the North Britain project. At that time, we had made discovery of the floor material that was excavated to be pretty poor, actually really poor. Anyone that's seen it, certainly the guys working on it, and Buck and I are astonished that that the existing structure is still standing. There's just mush underneath those sidewalls. So when we got into that, we had to do a little over excavation to get that poor material out of there and replace it with substantive material so we could build the new structure, pour the concrete of the new structure on that foundation. That's been done in the last, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. That first section has been completed, covered back over with temporary stone, and the rear entrances to the Coffee Beans and that commercial place has been opened up in anticipation of the front entrance and continuing the excavation of the existing structure in the coming weeks. The footings for the next 40 feet or so were poured today, actually. They poured earlier today. Part of the delay and the timing of the project is being extra cautious and making sure that the concrete, what happens when we pour concrete, we take cylinders, test cylinders when they pour that concrete, and they are cured and they're taken to a lab and they're broken. It's 7 days. And after 7 days, we see what the strength of that concrete is. And if it meets the specification, the standard, the industry standard is a 28-day strength test. What we are finding is we are meeting that 28-day strength in the 7 to 14 days. So once we meet that 28-day strength, if it's accelerated in 7 days, then we will cut the contractor loose to continue pouring additional concrete, if it's the footings as the sidewalls on those footings, or if it's the top slab, pouring it on the sidewalls. So we're waiting, especially since we were directly adjacent to that existing building. We wanted to make sure that the concrete strength was in good order before we proceeded on with additional pours. So that's been part of the delay. Another component of the equation for the timing is the property owner of the property on the corner. Most everyone knows who that is, has reached back out to the city. We obtained easements from that property owner. That property owner has reached back out to the city and the contractor doing the work. Hawkins and Price is the contractor doing the work for the city. They have also done a lot of work for the owner of that corner piece. And the owner talked to Hawkins and Price about possibly demoing the front building in its entirety that's closest to, help me out. What street?
Jefferson bypass.
Yeah, it's closest to the bypass. If that is able to proceed, that will significantly help the city financially and timing wise, because there will need to be less use of trench boxes when we're excavating the existing structure out, and pouring the new one in. They'll be able to lay back to meet OSHA standards for their slopes on those sidewalks. In October, when Buck came and presented to you, the approximate cost changes were around 5%. About $38,000 was the increase based on the subsurface material we found. We have, in continued excavations, that material has continued to be present. So we have evaluated about 3 different alternatives to see if we could transition to a different cross section, a different type of structure. We looked at precast piping, and we looked at a 4-sided box instead of a 3-sided structure, which is what was designed and currently what was put in place. The 4-sided structure is the most economical option that we've evaluated, and it's going to be, so basically we'll be pouring a structured floor instead of the footings that you see there. So there'll be 4 sides to this structure, and that will allow for an increase in some reinforcing steel at approximately somewhere around $40,000 in additional steel. So we are, and as we discussed with you in October, as we started approaching anything around 10% increase in the original contract price, we wanted to bring to you a formal change order so that no one's surprised at the end of the project and you just come with a big number. So what we would anticipate is at your February meeting, February work session, we will have a change order for you to consider. We anticipate it being somewhere in the total with the initial changes of around 39, and then the additional steel and a couple of additional items. It's probably going to be somewhere in the $80,000 to $100,000 range. That is still about $250,000 cheaper than the second lowest bid that was received for the project. So total bid amount or total contract amount currently is around $742,000. So again, that's where we're approaching that 10 to 12% increase based on the subsurface conditions that have been found. There was a failure spot that was somewhat present before construction started, and it was around 2 water meters that were there running the bypass road, and that has been excavated and fortified to a degree. You may have seen the wood framing around with the orange safety fence. That's what's happened there. The structure was being undercut by the natural flow of water, and the sidewalls had caved in, at least on the southern end of our southern sidewall had caved in. So that material was excavated out, cleaned up, and flow was restored through that area temporarily until we can get the new structure in there. All of that is resulting from a meeting that Mr. Collins and Mr. Valad and I had with the contractor on December 12th, and we explored all those options. Contractor took the options that we wanted him to evaluate back to his office and gave us some numbers, and then we as a staff evaluated our numbers internally, and that's where we came to the conclusion of the 4-sided structure. It will prevent us from having to over excavate. We will be able to get in there and utilize the existing material. We'll only have to take out 12 inches of it, go back with base stone, as opposed to having to take out 48 inches of it, which is what was done in the 3-sided section. I know a lot of that's technical information, but I'd be glad to talk about any or all of it as you guys desire.
Any questions from Mr. Owen? Scott, you have anything to add?
Yes, I would just like to add, our city treasurer provided some information. And she just wanted to remind the city council and mayor that we still have the AERP funds. And a portion of them funds, of course, the majority of them is going for the flood pumps, number one priority. But we also kept some money back just in case the North Britain project had any cost overruns. And she just wanted me to bring that to your all's attention that we do have funding available.
The flood pumps, I believe, came in, I want to say 300,000 less than what was budgeted for. And then Buck and I kid, and it's not necessarily a joking manner, but we poke fun of each other. We both had thought, before any pen was put to paper and before any shovel was in the ground, we both said North Britain would be around $1 million project, and we're closing in on that. So hopefully, I don't anticipate getting to that level unless we run into other unknowns, which is always possible when you're excavating old structures. But that's kind of where we had, thought the project would land once we got everything done.
Any timeline that you have?
We do, in that December 12th meeting, we discussed, Scott, remind me,
March.
April 1st, right?
end of March, April 1st was what we were looking at.
Okay.
And that'll be part of that formal change order that we'll bring to you. It'll be a dollar amount and a contract time amount that we'll consider as well.
Any other questions for?
Britain Street should be open before that. They'll be past that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
the primary goal would be to get to the corner and get turned and get Britain back opened, certainly before April 1st, and then work on that straightaway time back into the existing.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, with no further questions, the next item is the growth plan in relation to the infrastructure capabilities. Scott, would you take us through that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had some conversations, several of you all, about the explosive growth that the city has been experiencing and more to come. And there's a lot of talk at this time about different components of it. And so we would like to recommend that we host, the city council and mayor, host a joint meeting with, of course, you all, the Shelbyville Power Board and key employees, as well as our key employees and the planning commission. Just to have a discussion on where we're going, what the issue is with the river outtake, all these issues that's just being discussed. I think if we all got in the same room with this council leading the way and of course the mayor, we can have a clear message of where we want our city to go. And we would like to host that on or about February 15th at the Recreation Center to give adequate space for all the respective representatives as well as the interested public. And the February date gives staff members time to prepare to address some of the concerns and some of the rumors that's out there.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right, number 3, additional kennel tech for animal control. Scott, if you talk to us about that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, we're stepping up some issues with animal control. And one of the key components of our revised ordinance will be, we needed help before this new ordinance, and now this just emphasizes the need. And next month, after we get an opportunity to evaluate a little better, we may even be asking for an additional animal control officer, because there have been questions about how we're gonna enforce and et cetera. But right now, the critical need is a kennel tech. And we will have the job description and financial figures at the business meeting if you all approve to move it forward.
Questions?
Is it gonna be a full-time position?
No, no, sir, part-time.
And I think you had something you had sent to us about the price range or dollar amount, and those kind of things.
That was on,
Yeah.
the other issue.
Okay,
I
okay.
don't have the.
Okay.
Is it Scott?
I can't see.
I'm sorry.
Okay. We didn't bring that down.
If we can,
Was that it?
no, that's
No.
on the.
All right. Any questions? All right, let's move to number 4. The Azure lease amendment and consent to leasehold deed of trust. Mr. Paul Perry, our airport director. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening. This is actually something that would be better coming from our city attorney. She's much more versed on contracts and things of that nature. Luckily, I get to shake the hands. That's what I get to do. She gets to do the paperwork.
This is, if you recall, when we did the Azure lease, part of one of the things that we recognize is they're going to be building on our land, our leasehold that they're doing. We have a clause in our lease with them that we would approve financing and their deed of trust. So that's what happened at our last airport authority meeting. They brought those documents for us to approve their financing. So it's normal. Of course, everything's in order, and I worked with their 2 attorneys on that.
Just a quick update on that project as well. I've recently just approved their layout drawings, so everything's been designed for their construction. They've gone through right now environmental studies, submitting the paperwork for all the environmental work that's there based on the layout. And they hope to break ground as soon as those studies are approved. So it's the design is prepped and ready to go. The consultant and the contractor are ready to go. Just waiting on the paperwork for not only the money, but also for the environment.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Perry on that? I'll just keep your spot there. I've got you next in line there too. Any questions about that? What's that, about 6 acres?
Yes, it'll end up being between 5 and 6 acres of asphalt put on the ground.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions, folks? All right, number 5 is airport traffic control tower request. Perry?
Okay. What you have now is this particular request from the airport authority is for a letter of interest that would go to FAA, and actually it's a mouthful for this gentleman's title. I feel sorry for him. He is the Federal Contract Tower Program Implementation Manager. That's, yeah, it probably has to have a bifold card. But that particular gentleman, what this letter does is says that the city and the airport are interested in looking into or studying the need for a tower, a control tower at our airport. From the reason why this has come about is from multiple discussions with FAA, the state of Tennessee, and then also a lot of the concerns that were brought out during public meetings when this discussion of MTSU come. There were a lot of concerns, and after talking with different operations people with MTSU and other airports and things of that nature that have experienced some of the same growth in capacity, the best course seemed to be a control tower. And what that does, especially for those that were concerned about noise, that expands your they can tell you to, they can direct your traffic out, they can expand your pattern. You don't have a standard pattern. You utilize whatever the control tower tells you to do, so it helps that. But it also will control some of the ground operations and things like that, which a lot of people were concerned, some of the local pilots were concerned that the ground would get too crowded for them to be able to get out. Well, the control tower takes care of the ground too. So that, there just seemed to be every time that something would come up in discussions with our growth at the airport, the tower seemed to be the answer. So we were wanting to start this process. And I do know that air traffic control is very concerned about it. They've reached out to us in reference to what some of our numbers are showing in forecasting and things of that nature. So that was one of they're really for it. The state of Tennessee's for it. They're pushing to help. But this letter is not committing the city to any funds of anything like that. It's just basically saying we want to talk. We want to talk is kind of the idea. We have an interest. We want to see what it takes to make this happen. So it's not a financial commitment through this letter. And it just kicks off studies. It does put us in line because anything when you're working with FAA seems to take 3 to 5 years or something. So it just gets us in the queue with this letter.
Did we discuss it one time in some of our talks about maybe the National Guard or military, MTSU maybe helping us with that?
All the
like
above.
that?
All the above has been discussed. As
Yeah.
a matter of fact, part of it is we're still in discussions, and we've been in discussion for quite some time with the Guard to
Okay.
be able to find maybe a possible home, a permanent home for the 107th, which is their main function is airfield operations.
Okay.
So this would be a place for them to be able to have a permanent home, do permanent training, man it. Through research with Aeronautics Division, we found out that this is we're not reinventing the wheel. This has been done at other airports. So it's another thing that helps state, federal, and local in a way because they're providing the manpower. It helps to be able to provide expertise that we don't have to pay for. But this would be under the contract control program, but it would be funded. Their personnel will be funded through the federal government if we qualify for the program. But one of the things through MTSU would be looking and helping with sources for funding to make this happen as well.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you, sir. All right, number 6 is transportation planning grant, and we'll ask Waleed if he would to come and help us with the information on that.
Good evening, Mayor. Happy New Year. Oh,
Got one?
next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mayor, we have a very good funding opportunity here. If you look at the sheet I have for you, if you guys recall, we have a discussion earlier this year about corridor study that we are actually working on between us, Bedford County, and Rutherford County as well. So this ties into this corridor study. So I think like 6 days ago, like on the 26th of December, I know it's unusual time, we got notification that the deadline for the study you have, which is the corridor study, is January 19th. And as part of the submission, we have to have a resolution from City Council authorizing us to apply. So we worked very quickly on one you will see that talks about what we need. It's actually the standard submitted from the state. So all what we are trying to do is just work as quickly as possible to submit it before the deadline. It will open only for 1 day, the 19th. So the way it works is it's up to $200,000. Of course, you might need not get all of it, but it's up to 200,000, and it's 90% by the state and 10% by the city. And it will be needed because we are working on a corridor study to cover at least 231 and 41A, which, as you all know, there's a lot of development going on along the two corridors, which will actually tie into another topic we will have later on about development on Union, which is part of Florida funding. So it's part of being proactive and knowing exactly what we should do, and instead of waiting when we have application and we wait, we struggle to find a good solution. Any question about this one?
You mentioned 41A, and what was the other?
Main, which is 231. Those are the ones we are collaborating on between us and the county as well, because some sections of it are outside our jurisdiction. So you have to get multiple jurisdictions included to make it more effective. And I see you are wondering if you have any question, let me know. I might be able to help.
Any questions for Waleed on this?
So that's the far out of 231, because you're congested there in a certain period there. So I would assume, tell me where that study
So
would be.
this also can be determined if we get the funding as part of the engineering kind of discussion when we hire a consultant to do it. But the goal is, as you know, some section of 231 are already built out.
Yes.
So the focus will be the ones outside.
Yes.
You think there being any part of that study will deal with 437, the extra loop we were talking about trying to get over the 41A? You know, when we were doing the bypass that went over to 41A, I guess they call that south going toward Tullahoma. Have you heard anything on that, Buck? Have you heard anything on that or anything?
It's still bogged down. I mean, they were, I know they ran into some archaeological problems.
Yes, sir.
And I hadn't heard any updates since then. They were they had a couple different access points that they were looking at. But I haven't heard if they nailed anything down yet. They haven't contacted me or anything, so.
Okay.
Did they say anything? Did you make it to the RPO meeting, Mayor?
No, not about the 437, no.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Stay where you're at, Waleed. I think you're the next. We're gonna go through. Any other questions for Waleed on that corridor study? Okay, number 7, well, old business resolutions. And let me read it for you. Second final reading, public hearing, a resolution adopting a plan of services for an area proposed for annexation. The territory is 48.73 acre tract of land located on the north side of Union Street, west of Jennings Lane, and referenced on Bedford County Tax Map 079, parcel 014. To be annexed by owner consent and to be incorporated within the boundaries of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, and owned by James Bond and Elizabeth Gowan. Waleed?
Yes, usually this is the second reading. If you like, I can go over it, but usually we don't do it, but just very quickly, we are talking about this parcel here, which is 48.7 acres.
Right.
And along with it is the other one here, which has the number 120. The whole idea is to annex the two and combine them. And later on, as I guess, item number 7 or 8, there will be one about zoning. So the annexation already went to the planning commission. It has unanimous recommendation. It went for the first reading by council before in our previous meeting, and also with unanimous approval. So what happens next week will be the second reading and the public hearing. Again, this is just the annexation, it's not the zoning.
And that's those first 4,
Yes,
7, 8, 9, and 10.
exactly.
One of them is the plan of services, and the other is the actual annexation. One for the 48 acre tract, and the other one for the 8%. So there's been no changes on those
Yes.
since the first reading.
So if you look at your agenda, item 7, 8, 9, and 10, about the two properties, each property will have to have two resolutions. One is the annexation, the second one is the plan of services.
So the planning commission did recommend for the plan of services, but what about the annexation?
Let me explain. So the annexation is actually two components. For each item, there have to be a plan of services, and the other one is annexation. They actually have favorable recommendation for the two.
All those 4 items received a favorable recommendation from the planning commission to annex in those 2 pieces of property.
So if you look at the agenda, you have items 7 and 8 that for the same piece of land.
Let me go ahead and read 8, if you don't mind, Wally. Plan of services is one thing. Of course, we're talking about fire, police, all types of services there. But number 8 is the resolution for annexation of that 48.73 acres. A resolution to annex certain territory upon written consent of the owners to incorporate the same within the boundaries of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee. This property is a 48.73 acre tract of land located on the north side of Union Street, west of Jennings Lane, and referenced as Bedford County map, tax map 079, parcel 014, and owned by James Bond and Elizabeth Gallo. And just like Lisa's saying, one of them is for plan of services for that same piece of property. The other one is annexation. Correct?
That's good.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and read 9, which is the resolution for the 18.119 acre tract.
Which is the one.
This is a resolution adopting a plan of services for an area proposed for annexation. The territory is an 18.19 acre tract of land located west of Jennings Lane and referenced on Bedford County tax map 068, parcel 120, to be annexed by owner consent and to be incorporated within the boundaries of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, and owned by James Bond and Elizabeth Gallo. Wally, go ahead and tell us where that 18 acres is right there, please, on the map.
That's the one we're talking about, so, which has the number 120.
Okay.
And it's immediately next to the other one, the bigger one, which is 48 plus acres. And again, the goal is to combine the two and have a new subdivision.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read 10 now, which is the annexation portion of that 18.19 acres. A resolution to annex certain territory upon written consent of the owners and to incorporate the same within the boundaries of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee. This property is an 18.19 acre tract of land located on the west of Jennings Lane and referenced as Bedford County tax map 068, parcel 120, and owned by James Bond and Elizabeth Gallo. Okay, that covers both those pieces of land. Now, if you have questions for Waleed on either one of those, plan of services or annexation, please let him know.
And this is to, as you mentioned, did I hear you say for housing
Yes.
units?
So the goal is, if it's annexed now, it automatically becomes an R1, which is the lowest density. However, later on during the meeting, you will see that there is an application to zone it to R2, which is a higher tier compared to the R1. And it will be, all of them allow only single detached.
I'm sorry.
All of them, be it R1 or R2, they only allow single detached. They don't allow townhomes. However, the R1 is bigger in terms of the size compared to the R2.
The lot size.
Lots of.
Yes, lot size.
Wow.
15 acres is gonna stay the barn, leaving the barn and the horse equestrian.
That's it.
You want to tell us the difference between R1 and R2?
I will have a slide later on that shows the difference
Okay. All right.
when we come to the zoning stage.
And when we look at those properties, Waleed, if I remember correctly, I sit on the planning commission. We talked about three different entrance and exits on that property. Is that correct?
Can I speak?
We are talking about so far,
One,
one here,
that's on 41A.
yes,
Okay.
another one somewhere here, and another one down here.
2 on Jennings Lane. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But they will not be directly across from the Garden Gate subdivision?
One of them would be.
Jonesville?
Jonesville.
Okay, all right. Everybody clear with, what about where it's at? What we're talking about?
We will have a concept at the zoning stage. I will show what it is. Yeah,
I understand that there was a lot of discussion on, during the planning commission meeting, I missed that, but was there a lot of opposition?
On the other property across the street now.
Not a word, Marilyn, not a word. That's what amazed me, that 60-something acres right there, that they're fixing to cover houses. Not a word. Now, across the street, a whole different game.
Gotcha.
I will cover it all in detail at the zoning stage. I just don't-
Just wait on that.
Not a word. Like, there's not gonna be any traffic on that side. That traffic on that side don't matter, but you live on this side, it's a big deal.
The plan is a Union Street entrance will be totally horses. No, nothing, not using
Any other questions for Wally? Okay, all right, Wally, just, are you holding up all right?
I'm good.
All right, good. Ordinances, let's go to, number 11. An ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve a rezoning, a portion of the 53 acres owned by Black Diamond Construction located west of Green Lane near Northside Park Drive and referenced on Bedford County Tax Map 78, parcel 11, from residential R4, high-density residential district, to residential R3, medium-density residential district, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. I think anybody have questions about the difference between R4 and R3 there? Wally, you want to tell us a little difference?
I don't have a slide, Mayor, but if you recall, this was a technical application just because they had an issue because they cannot build single detached home on a lot that has two zones. So that's why they are actually doing the opposite of what we usually see. And instead of increasing the density, they are actually downsizing. So that's why it was considered very technical. It has no impact on anybody from the neighbor because it's all within the middle of the property that is owned by the same owner.
Any questions for Waleed on that?
How many units are we looking at there?
Well, it's part of a bigger application. So the ones that will be on this area to be zoned will be about 9 or so. But the whole site will have, based on the last submission, about 160 plus. I don't remember the exact number. And if you recall, this is the one where the TVA easement is. So this is what they are actually zoning or down zoning to medium density.
Any other questions for Wally on that one? Okay. All right, 12. An ordinance to amend the municipal code of the city of Shelbyville related to city council meeting and publication requirements. We'll ask our attorney, Ms. Schaffner, to tell us about that.
This is our second reading on this, is us adopting the rules of order and changing a couple of things that were out of date in our municipal code. Nothing's changed since y'all's first passage of that last month. Any questions?
We had a lot of questions at the planning commission about where we published those things and put it out for the public to be aware of what's going on in the city. And we do publish it in our newspapers, right, Lisa?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we do publish it on our website, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's out there for everyone to see if they just take advantage of that to notify that. I think there was a request for us to send individual letters, which is impossible for the city to do, as those that were in the meeting with me the other night, they remember that. Okay, any other questions about that? All right, thank you. New business, ordinances, first reading. Number 13, an ordinance to establish an updated occupational safety and health plan, program plan, devise rules and regulations, and to provide for a safety director and the implementation of such a program plan. Lisa, would you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. This is, a requirement that we have this on file, that we have a policy. The policy is basically, our human resources person, Stacy Claxton, serves as our, safety director. And it's a policy just stating that we provide a safe, healthy workplace for everybody. It's got rules, policies, procedures that we have to go by. And there's been a few little minor updates in it from the state that is why we're having to adopt it again. Also, when we have a change in the mayor or the safety director, we're required to update it or every 7 years. So at this time, there were a few minor changes that were in it, and also the mayor has changed. So that's the reason for the update. And it is an ordinance, so there'll be a public hearing and a second reading in February.
Okay, any questions about that? All right, again, we're on first reading on these ordinances. Number 14 is an ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the rezoning of 48.73 acres owned by James Bond and Elizabeth Gallum, located on the north side of Union Street, west of Jennings Lane, and referenced on Bedford County Tax Map 079, parcel 014, from residential R1, low-density residential district, to residential R2, low residential district, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Waleed, you want to tell us a little bit
Sure,
on that?
absolutely. This one has a very interesting story, Mayor, so I'll just give you the gist of it. So we are talking about this parcel and this one here. So about 6 months ago, the staff was approached by a couple of developers from outside of town. Initially, what they had in mind was actually apartment buildings and townhomes. When we have any discussions with any applicant or potential applicant, usually what we do is we study what they're talking about and we go over our regulations. By our regulations, I mean zoning ordinance, process for annexation, future land use map. So when we looked at this, and also the character of the neighborhood. So when we looked at this, it is in the future land use map. I'm talking about this piece of land and this one as low density. Low density in our future land use map means it can allow for either what we call R1 or R2, which is residential low density, item 1 or item 2. The main difference between the two is for an R1 lot, it has to be minimum 15,000 square feet. The R2 has to be minimum 10,000 square feet. Means basically R1 is about 1.5 the size of an R2, which of course, when you do the subdivision, if you do the math, you'll see the difference. So when we talked about it, we, as staff, also looked at the neighborhood. By the neighborhood, I mean the area here and the other one here. So there is multi-family in the form of apartment building close by, but it was done way back. I'm not sure when. However, the lots here differ in size between 10,000 and 15,000. The same applies to the subdivision here. So we felt comfortable based on the regulation, the character of the area, that R2 could be a good fit. And this is what we recommended as staff to the applicant, that if it's more than that, meaning more than R2, we would not be able to support it based on our regulations. And here I'm just giving you an idea of the subject site, this one and this one here. And you could see the color here that we have means it's outside the city. As we know, it's still being in the process of annexation. And anything usually in the county is zoned for agriculture. That's the standard zone in the county. This is what I was referring to, which is the future land use map. If you see the color here, which is a beige color, this is the low density, which means also, again, R1 or R2 are potentially possible based on the character of the area. And here I have the total size of the minimum requirement in R2 and minimum requirement in R1, which you can see it here, 15,000 and 10,000. So this actually applies to the two sites we're talking about. And however, when we went to the planning commission last week, and Lisa can correct me, it was a split zone. I don't recall it was.
A split vote?
So
Is that
sorry,
what you meant?
split
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah, it was, the planning commission sent it to the council with an unfavorable recommendation for the rezoning with the 6-3 vote. 6 members voting unfavorable, 3 voting favorable.
I'm not quite sure if they gave any justification or.
They did not feel like it met they wanted to keep it in line with the other houses in the area. They felt like an R1 fit better than the R2 did.
I see. So this is.
That was my understanding.
Again, this is the concept we have. This is not binding because only concept is that the only time we have a binding concept if it's part of a part. So this is what we have so far. So 2 axes along Jennings, one here aligning with the existing one to the east, and another one all the way up to the north here. And the one that was submitted also shows an axis along Union. That being said, we have a requirement of minimum access points, depending on how many lots. So depending on what they build, if it's over 100, they have to have minimum 2 access points. If it's over 150, it has to be 3 access points. So again, since this is not binding, I am not going to comment on it because if it's a zone, they can change it anytime. It just gives you an idea in case you would like to listen.
I have a question. Wally, the houses that are being built off of Cloverdale, is that R1 or 2? The new subdivision that's going through between Cloverdale and those over 2. What's the road that runs up behind the, behind the cemetery?
Wheatfield.
Yeah, Wheatfield subdivision. Is that 1 or 2?
Wheatfield. Wasn't it a pod? Do you remember?
It was a pod.
It was a pod, so it was a specific one. It's one where you actually have your own design standard, your own lot size, and it's approved or ejected as a whole.
They're all single family dwellings.
You can do that if it's approved as all single family, but it might be smaller than our typical ones. That's what you get. However, in exchange, if you do it as a pod, which means planned unit development, you have a requirement for minimum space, gain space, minimum kids areas. Also, there are more requirements sometimes in the design. We ask for higher design in general.
Thank you. It looks nice.
So when you see one, there might be one coming soon. I don't know when, in 60 days or so. It also has a part, which means that whatever they submit, they will have to follow. Unless, of course, they come back to you and asking for changes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Wally on that? That's number 14. Did that read correctly where it says R1 low density residential district and then it says R2 low residential? Is density supposed to be
density
after that? That's what I thought. That's been left out of that. If y'all want to add that in.
Thank you, man.
I thought that was the way it's supposed to read. Okay, any questions on number 14? Okay, if not, we'll go to 15. An ordinance of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee to approve the rezoning of 18.19 acres owned by James Bond and Elizabeth Gowan. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Located on the north side of Union Street, west of Jennings Lane, and referenced on Bedford County Tax Map 068 and parcel number 120 from residential 1 low density residential district to residential R2 low density residential district, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Question for Wally on that. That's 18 acres. It ties to that 28 there. Or it's going to be combined with it, I guess is what we say. Any questions?
This one also received an unfavorable recommendation from the planning commission,
Right.
with the same vote, 6-3.
Is,
Okay? Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's go to resolutions. Number 16. A resolution adopting a plan of services for an area proposed for annexation. The territory is a 124 acre tract of land located on the south side of Union Street, west of Jennings Lane, and referenced on Bedford County Tax Map 079, parcel 047, to be annexed by owner consent and to be incorporated within the boundaries of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, and owned by Franklin Swing. I think they've left his N out there. I know Frankie, Franklin Swing, and Rebecca Dawn Swing Bobo. Questions on that one? Do you know where that one's located? That's property we're talking about, Remington Farm, or
Yep.
what they call it, Remington Farm?
Edward, yeah. So may I just a quick update about this one? A portion of it, basically similar to where the light is here, along those lines, is already in the city. So not all of it is being annexed. So what is being annexed is actually about, I should say, what is being proposed for annexation is about 124 acres. And I know they had a lot of discussion between the applicant and Shelbyville Power, and I had this official letter from Mr. Jason. He's here saying that they don't have any objections for the annexation. They are working on a deal for, sewage and water improvement, and I know there will be payments. Some of it might have already been paid.
it's like 1.4 million.
Yes, yeah,
They're paying for.
I think that's right.
yes, he's actually mentioning it.
So instead of paying in phases, they're paying for the whole thing at one time.
All of it, yes.
All of it.
The water in sections. The water will be paid for in sections.
Yes, yes. That's just sewer, right?
Which is sewer.
Okay.
So this one went to the planning commission last week. It has favorable recommendation for the annexation. However, the part which is associated with it, is are doing some changes as we speak. So it will go back to the planning commission before it comes to you guys. Talking about the planned unit development, which is actual submission for development. This is just for annexing the land.
Part of that property, in part of it already in the city?
Yeah, let me show you this.
Show us that. And then part of it's gonna be commercial, correct?
Absolutely, but this will be at the pod stage.
Okay.
So if you look here, this color here, 38 acres, the one that has this kind of gray color, this is already in the city. This color, which is kind of light green, all of it is outside the city.
Okay.
It's not subdivided out, but it's already in the city and the county.
Okay.
And I know later on, yes, the part will be mixed use. It will have in the future commercial and residential.
Okay. Lisa, did you need to tell us about the vote on that, planning commission?
Yes, sir. I'll tell you, they voted, for a favorable recommendation for annexation with it was a split vote, 6-3.
Okay. All right, let me read resolution 17 while we're on that piece of property, okay? All right, resolution 17, and this says a resolution to annex a portion of certain territory upon written consent of the owners and to incorporate the same within the boundaries of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee. This property is a 124 acre tract of land located on the south side of Union Street, west of Jennings Lane, and referenced as Bedford County Tax Map 079, parcel 047, and owned by Franklin Swing and Rebecca Dawn Swing Bobo.
So Mayor, the reason why it says a portion and not all of it, because a portion of it is already in the city, so.
So total, is that gonna be 38 plus the 124?
Yes, the total of the whole future part that they'll cover.
Question on that.
Sure.
I checked on your map you've got up there, that green area which says outside the city, that property line to the right. Looks like according to your annexation, that is the boundary for the swing lane, right?
This is not correct. It should be a little bit more to the east. This one here?
That little triangle piece sticking out there is not in the annexation, correct?
This one here?
Just right of that, oh, down.
Down and to the right.
Down.
Across the line.
Right.
Across the line.
Right,
Oh.
right.
I've lost it here.
It sticks
Where
into the pink.
that little house is at, Wale?
Yeah, that piece.
Yeah,
Yes, this would be the outside.
So that technically has a hole in the city limits if we have this under these annexes. A hole.
That would be for
Inside of the city.
a bit, yes, for a while, yes. I don't know if they are here, but what I know is at some point they tried to get it as well, to add it, but I didn't know. It did not materialize.
okay, the big question was at planning commission, entrances and exits. Where's the entrance and exit for that piece of property?
As we speak, or I'm talking about the future planned unit development. As we speak, it's only from Union.
Okay, 41A,
What one?
one entrance, one exit. But they're talking about a rear entrance and exit off of Cloverdale,
Yeah,
am I correct?
Let me go back here.
If they get their permit.
If they get to.
If they get the
If they get it, yeah.
Again,
I'm just kind of getting an idea where everybody knows what we've got there.
so of course they will have one from Union. They will have one coming from here, which is Cloverdale. There will be future, what we call stubs, which doesn't mean it's connecting anywhere. It will just be there for future development to tie into it. What we are trying to do based on last week's discussion in the planning commission, we are actually revisiting the study that was done for the traffic study to see if there any potential for improvements for the access points. And I know some of the planning commissioners are here, so they might actually add to what I'm saying. What typically with that number of units, which is 750, it's the biggest ever single development in the history of the city. Yes, in the part that they submitted, they are showing future connection. However, they might never materialize. So I know some of the neighbors came to talk to me after the planning commission. What they had in mind is, can we have more than one access point coming from Union? I'm not saying this is feasible. I just sent it to TDOT and our engineer for future discussion.
Mayor, if I can.
You can.
Just to make certain council to understand, your planning commission did give you a favorable recommendation on annexation. The issue with the PUD, there were several, you could tell by the discussion of planning commission website, that they were concerned about traffic flow, access. And so there was a lot of discussion about upgrading the traffic study because it's 16 months old at this point and there's been development around it. The applicant agreed on record to waive your 60-day requirement on a decision by your planning commission in order for them to go back and do that. So the PUD application is still there, but they'll have to notify us when they get the traffic study updated and bring it back to the planning commission at that point. Planning commission then will have their time to be able to send you either a favorable or an unfavorable, and then you all make your decision. Understand, you're changing the law when you do a PUD, so that'll be up to you whether you allow a PUD or not. But they'll come in as an R1, from an annexation R1.
And if I may add, Mayor, so depending on the outcome of the changes or the updated study, they might have to do changes in the actual park. So that's why we wouldn't know until we have the study.
Does that make sense to everybody? They'll have to come back to us. If we annex that property, they'll have to come back to us. It's gonna be automatically R1. And then if they want to rezone it for the PUD, then they'd have to go before the planning commission again.
Again, they
Yeah.
have a recommendation. And
That's right,
after
for the
that,
PUD, right.
It-
That makes sense?
If I may, you don't mind. HUDs are a little bit different. Those are not rezonings per se. HUDs is its own type of entity. They sort of make their regulations. That's why we call it's changing the law. They don't necessarily follow exactly what your rezoning regulations are. That's why plan unit development's a little bit different. You're basically rezoning it as a part of the PUD to its own zone. That's why they have so much more than a regular subdivision. When they come with you, they have to have that whole thick book. They have to go by that. You have that book, you get to review all that book. You're basically saying, this is the zoning for this property. That's what a PUD is.
But that's what we're saying, it could come in as an R1
Absolutely.
if we annex it. And then they'd have to come back in to get the PUD
And they've already,
approved.
that's right, they've already got their PUD application in. Your planning commission was clearly concerned about access and traffic.
Right.
And that's why they were clearly wanting, he's sitting right here saying, I really want an updated traffic study. And so because of our regulations, when people come and ask for you applications, we can't just sit on them. There's a 60-day window which the planning commission has to actually make a decision, or it comes to you with a favorable recommendation automatically. Therefore, we usually ask those applicants, hey, we need more time, we need more information from you, and they agreed on record at the meeting to waive that 60-day requirement. And they agreed, we're gonna go back, we're gonna update our traffic study, and we'll let you know when we're ready for that. So depending on what that traffic study shows, it may show they don't need to change anything. We just don't know. So that will be going back to the planning commission before you ever see it, the application for the PUD.
And I think it's important, y'all all heard what Wally said, nobody's gonna snap their fingers and there's gonna be 700 houses out there in a week.
Yeah, that's why,
He may build hundreds of houses up. The developer may die. I mean, it don't, 700 scaring everybody to death, but it's not 700 in a year or who knows?
that's why we had the phasing plan that we showed that has 12 different phases.
Yeah.
It depends, again.
Yeah.
It might be booming and they might finish all of it in 5 years. Nobody can
Yeah.
tell now, but it will never happen all at once.
Yeah.
This is not the way it works.
Ain't no way. There ain't no way it's gonna happen.
And you guys, if you have any, and I'm talking to you as well, one of our commissioners here, when it comes back to you, and you rightly so, you can ask for different standards. You can ask for different things to be added. It's up to you at this stage.
Is there a certain time that the traffic study is conducted? I ask that because, some of the concerns, of course, would be there's no school there, it's only 2-lane highway, that type of thing. Was this study done when school was out and less traffic, or
I
it
know.
needs to be directed to a certain point at time?
I know one of our commissioners last week, they were talking about when to have it. So part of it has to be done during a school day. And I know, but I don't remember exactly. One of the commissioners asked for encasing the scope. By the scope, I mean the section of union that are covered in the study. So we're going to have a meeting on the 16th between our engineer, planning, and TDOT to work on the condition for the planning commission, to send it to the applicant, to get it to his engineer to work on it. So we didn't finalize what we are going to send to the applicant to work on. But for sure, it has to be done during the school day. They will encase the scope, I know for sure. And I know what other engineering requirements that our engineer might ask for. So there will be more requirement in the new study. Depend on the availability of the engineer doing the study.
Questions from anyone? 18 is a resolution to authorize a grant application to the Tennessee Housing Development Agency for home grant funds, HOME grant funds. Lisa, would you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. I think everybody on the council is familiar with this grant. We received it a couple of years ago. And it's the one where homeowners can apply for funds under this grant to rehab their house. And in certain circumstances, if their house is in such bad repair, then they can, they would, the, home people would decide that it was just beyond repair. They may even just tear it down and rebuild it. We apply for $500,000. The max amount you can apply for is $750,000. The reason that we apply for $500,000 is because there's a cap on $1 million for the whole county, and Bedford County also applies for it. So if we applied for $750,000, that would only leave $250,000 for them. So it's just more neighborly for both of us to apply for $500,000. We were awarded it last time, there's no guarantee. So once we apply for it, if we are awarded for it, South Central Tennessee Development, they help us administer it. We accept applications. There's a scoring policy, and they pick the ones with the most need and help as many as they can till the funds run out. This is just the resolution to authorize us to apply for it.
And it's my understanding, I think the rules are still the same. It has to be an owner-occupied residence.
That is correct.
Not somebody who, rental home or something, you're not gonna help out somebody that owns 500 rental homes to get your house.
No.
It has to be an owner-occupied.
Owner occupied, it has to be, yes, sir. You are correct.
Anyone else have a thought? Thank you, Councilmember Bell, for that clarification. Number 19, Retail Academy attendance. Scott?
This is, as y'all know, we're in a contract with Retail Academy, and January 22nd, 23rd, they are hosting an academy to train 3 of us up in retail recruitment. And we just want to get a resolution like we do when we go to TML, Governor's Conference, etc., to authorize the expenditure. The tuition and associated expenses are paid for as part of the contract, but the room and mileage will be city expense.
Yeah, they're even gonna feed us, I think, most every meal we're there.
Any questions for our city manager on that? All right, we'll move on to business items, purchasing and bid items. Number 20, we'll ask Ms. Sadler, Lori, if you would come forward. Number 20 is requesting an authorization to let request for proposal, RFP, for replacement of one HVAC unit at the Senior Citizen Center. That's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, what HVAC stands for. Lori, would you help us on that?
Yes, sir. City owns and maintains the building. The Senior Citizen Center leases. And it was brought to my attention last week that a 12-year-old unit is exhausted. And it's beyond, they're not recommending repair at all anymore. We've already run some repairs toward it, and it's 12 years old. It's not just the unit, it's the housing, the sheet metal. The guy who looked at it said sheet metal fatigue and numerous cracks and breaks of the support structure. So this is running it over my bid threshold of $15,000. So that's why I'm asking to let RFPs, so I can let invite other companies to look at it and then come back to you hopefully the next month.
Okay.
And I did put a sentence in there. The director of the center, Sonia Miller, she's okay. They're okay. They're opening doors and letting the other units heat that area. And she just requests that we have it in place by March 1st when their classes pick back up.
Just for clarification, the Senior Citizen Center that we have in Shelbyville, that's only funded by the city of Shelbyville, not by the county at all?
No, I don't know. I think
Is
the
there any
county gives
county
them-
funding on that?
I do believe so.
I
Is
think
there?
they do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We just own the building
Okay.
and maintain the exterior.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions for Lori? Can't wait till she sits down, let her get back.
Oh, sorry.
Appointments. Safe and Affordable Housing Committee. As mayor, I have asked multiple times for recommendations on that. I still don't have any names. Lisa, have we received anything on that?
No, sir, I haven't, with them having 2 openings, I just keep putting it on here so we don't forget about it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, is there any other business that we need to handle tonight as far as a study session? Are there any announcements that we need to make? If not, let's adjourn.